Hey guys!
Hello!
Welcome back to the Zilinski life.
Today, we are going to chat with you guys about financial advice we wish we had taken in our 20s. Because we got a lot of good advice from friends, families, books, so forth, that we didn't take because we assumed that we were just going to naturally do it better by accident. That was not the case. We wish we'd taken that advice, so now we're going to share some of that with you. Enjoy!
Alright, so we have not pre-planned this video out. I had started making some notes for myself, but Cody and I have not reviewed the notes. We have not talked about this beforehand. We are very much a fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants couple because we have a 8-month-old baby at home who is very touch and go with naps.
Yeah, she's got 5 teeth coming in right now.
Is there a dent on there or is that just a speck of dust?
I assume it's dust.
God, I hope so. I dropped it before this video, our monitor for the baby.
Yeah, the monitor, not the baby.
Yes. So we have no idea how long she's going to nap for.
Yeah, she's real hit or miss with naps anyway, and she's got 5 teeth coming in, so you may just hear Banshee wailing spontaneously.
So we literally both made a quick cup of tea. See? Quick cups of tea. And this is either going to be a really great video
or it's going to be an utter disaster, and you guys will never see it, so...
Yeah.
So let's go.
I'm going to start with point number 1, and that was to stay at home just a little bit longer. For me, personally. I think Cody stayed at home a little bit longer, although you paid rent.
I didn't stay at home, per se. I moved out of home, moved in with friends of the family, then moved back in with family briefly, and back and forth.
Yeah. For me, I moved out hours after I finished writing my last diploma for high school. So I was still 17. My then boyfriend and I at the time moved to a town that I had never been to before, you know, like an hour away from the city I grew up in where all my friends and family were. And like I got a full-time job. I started working, but when you're young, you're working in retail, making minimum wage. I was fresh out of high school. I was working like part-time, sometimes full-time hours, and like I had no extra money because all my money was going to food, which is mostly takeout because at that age I didn't know how to cook. I still don't. I know how to cook, I just don't like it. And to rent and to utilities, and like it was just, looking back, it was a stupid move. I was so hungry for my independence and to prove to the world that I could take care of myself, that had I stayed at home for another 3 to 5 years, like I could have saved so much money. And like my dad always charged me rent, even from a young age, just to build that responsibility in me, but he would have charged me way less than me moving out on my own. So and kind of counterpoint to that, I wish I actually would have gotten out on my own a little earlier, because everywhere I lived I was paying pretty decent rent, almost comparable to what we pay now. But I was always just living in someone else's home. I never felt like I had my space, so instead of cooking when I was hungry, I built a really strong habit of going for a walk and getting fast food, and then going for a drive and getting fast food once I got a car. And it's a habit that honestly I'm struggling to break. I really wish I would have had more time in my formative years to have my own space and develop good habits around being a responsible adult. The next one I'm going to mention, it's actually number 3 on my list, but I should put this as number 1. It's save 10% of everything you make. Everything. I don't care what it is. Whether you sold stuff at a garage sale, you got a tax return, you
found a dime on the sidewalk.
Your regular job, your part-time job, like whatever it is, 10% at least of everything you make should go into a savings account that you do not touch ever.
Because like the bottom line is that in your 20s, I mean, you're not making generally massive amount of money when you're really young. And you know, for a lot of people, that 10% of every paycheck would be like, you know, $30, $40, $50. If that's going to break you, you need to drastically rethink things. You're never going to regret having more money later. Yeah. Basically is what I'm getting at. Like
10% is not an amount you're going to miss, but it's going to make a huge difference. Especially if you start, like even when you're like 16 and you got a part-time job, you know?
Yeah.
Just save your money.
Yeah, and the key is like don't use that as savings for like your first car or something like that. Use that as your savings that like 70-year-old you is going to thank you for.
Yeah, for those kind of savings I would do one of 2 things. A down payment on a home, or retirement. Those are probably the only two reasons I would ever touch that money. A down payment on a home or retirement, and that's it.
Yeah, and I guess going off that, kind of like I said earlier, work really hard when you're young. It's way easier to go hard in your 20s than it is in your 30s. You can be much more single-minded. You can recover from just beating yourself up much quicker and much better. I really wish that I'd have done more in my 20s so that I could coast a little more in my 30s, or at least maintain in my 30s, because I mean, I'm not that old, but I feel like I'm getting old, and it's getting a lot harder to do a lot of things, like embarrassingly so, and it happens quicker than you think.
Another thing I have on my list here, and it's something that my dad always told me growing up over and over and over again. It was needs versus wants, needs versus wants. And my dad would always tell me, like, you should always put your needs over your wants. And a lot of the times your wants will feel like needs, or they'll feel more important than needs. It's like, I really want a new iPhone every year. Anybody who knows me knows that I want the new iPhone every year. I am guilty of that. I don't buy a lot of makeup. I don't buy a lot of clothes. I don't buy a lot of anything, really. Like, the amount of money I've spent on makeup in the last 5 years is probably like $100. I shouldn't say in 5 years. That's maybe a bit of a stretch, but probably in the last like 2 years, I've probably spent like $50 to $100 on makeup in the last 2 years. But I do buy an iPhone every year. And that to me always feels more important than a need of like groceries or a need of like saving some money.
Yeah. If she was like out of breath in a pool and there was a new iPhone at the bottom, I can't guarantee that she'd come up for air first. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
So it's very important to distinguish the difference between your needs and your wants and prioritize your needs.
Yeah.
Over your wants.
Or barring the ability to realistically distinguish needs from wants, at least set your clear priorities and do it in such a way that you can cover all your bases. Like for us, we're not going to go out of pocket on, whenever the new phone is released. We're not going to spontaneously go buy a new phone. We've been setting money aside for it and making it a priority for a while. That way, when it does come up, we got the money there. It's not, oh, hey, we're going to take a couple months off eating so we can have a new gadget.
The next thing I have on my list is build an emergency fund of 3+ months of your living expenses. For a long time, we very strictly followed Dave Ramsey's budget, which says so long as you're paying off debt, you only have a $1,000 emergency fund. You don't save anything above that $1,000. No. Everything else goes to debt. And then once you're out of debt, then you can work on saving, investing, that kind of thing.
And that is phenomenal advice, but it's also contingent on the idea that you have a steady, stable, predictable income. Whereas like someone like me, I don't. My industry is very hit or miss. It's very project based. So for years we were running $1,000 emergency fund, which is great for fixing an appliance or your tire blows out or like an emergency comes up. It'll cover that. But frequently we were in a place where we had no money saved up outside of that $1,000. We'd paid down a bunch of debt, but we had nothing to live off once my income went away, or once our income went away or shrunk. And that created a lot of revolving debt for us. That's the bulk of how we've spent $200,000 trying to pay off 60. Is, we dumped 10 grand on a credit card because we had it, and then the income would go away and we'd have to rack the credit card back up because you got to eat.
Which brings me to my next point. Don't get a credit card. Like, I got my first credit card when I was 18, and I was so convinced. I was like, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to put like a pack of gum on there and then pay it off. Easy peasy.
I did the same thing. That's what I did for a long time. I made sure I got the lowest balance on my credit card that I could. I never spent more than 10 or 15 bucks a month on it. Paid it off just to, build that credit and be responsible. And that went fine kind of for years until I hit financial straits. And then I was in a rough spot. I needed money. I maxed out my credit card to the very highest limit they'd give me, which was pretty good because I had a good track record of good credit. And then all of a sudden I was maxed out at $1,000 that took me forever to pay off. Like, I spent about $6,000 trying to get that $1,000 balance down to zero. Yeah.
And here's, like, reflecting back on all the mistakes I've made, here's my thought, because I was always told, oh, you need a credit card to build credit. That is a lie. There are a lot of other things that report to the credit bureau that improve your credit score that doesn't require a credit card. like any loans that you have, your cell phone bills, like that, those all report to the credit company. Now, the reason why I say loans is because a lot of people at some point do wind up financing a vehicle. I would never recommend financing a new car, and that's what's on my list here. Don't buy a new car. I don't care what anybody tells you. A car is not an asset. It's a liability. It's a depreciating item. It's a liability, especially if you're financing it. It'll always cost you money, even if you don't have a loan on it, because then you're paying your maintenance and gas and insurance and stuff like that. It's taking money from you.
Yeah. The best you can really hope for, if you buy a new car, its value immediately gets cut in half as soon as you sign the paper. The best you can hope for with a car is to break even or only lose a tiny little bit by, say, getting like a 10-year-old luxury car that was in good shape and then reselling it for close to what you paid for it.
Yeah, so I would always,
a year or two later.
Always buy used, buy something reliable. If you're going to finance something, again, look at financing something used. It improves your credit score by having a track record of making payments on time, but it's still not a credit card where you're tempted or maybe forced into using it when times are tough. And then the last thing I had on this list, and if Cody's got anything else to add after this, then awesome. But it's learn to budget, which is what our whole channel is about right now, is sharing our budget with you guys.
Us learning to budget responsibly.
Yes.
Without living that meager Spartan lifestyle that everybody hates.
And there's a big difference between knowing how to budget and following your budget. Because for years I've known how to budget. I know how to make a budget. I know how to look at my income, spend less than what I make a budget based on what I have, what percentages should be going to what things. I know how to budget. For years I didn't know how to stick to a budget. That makes a huge difference. A lot of times, like for years when Cody and I first started budgeting, we would make a budget and then we wouldn't look at it for the whole month, and then at the end of the month we'd go through and we'd be like, oh, we overspent here, we overspent there, and it was basically like we were just tracking our spending and being like, whoa, we're over budget on everything.
Yeah, and then we'd say, hey, we should spend less on this and this next month,
even though we were
all right, we'll see you next month.
Yeah, even though we were going over budget every month, and we would just like set these arbitrary numbers that we thought sounded and looked good that weren't realistic for our lifestyle, for what we were used to. I see that our baby's waking up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just continue.
Maybe, yeah.
With the video.
We'll see. If you hear screaming, you know she's not asleep.
But learn to budget. Our number one, most favorite, most used program for a few years now is YNAB, which is You Need a Budget. The way they go about budgeting makes way more sense. There's a bit of a learning curve if you've never budgeted like this before. But YNAB has fantastic resources. There's also a lot of other YouTubers out there, us being one of them, that show you how we budget in real life with real numbers. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
But I've tried Mint, I've tried Every Dollar, I've tried using Excel spreadsheets, I've tried doing it on
just
paper.
actual cash envelopes.
Yeah, we've tried actual cash envelopes, I've tried using it in a bullet journal. Like, we've done numerous different formats of budgeting, and hands down, I think YNAB has been the easiest, makes the most sense.
Yeah.
I think she went back to bed.
Because the nice thing about the cash envelopes that you'll know about if you've follow Ramsey, which I think the bulk of us have at least heard of him. It's really the really powerful thing about the cash envelopes is that that's all the cash you have on hand, right? So if you want to go outside of that to, say, party with your friends, it could potentially put you in the situation of like, I have to literally take like my kids' lunch money to go do this. And it creates a lot of that emotional resonance to help you stick to your budget. And YNAB does something similar digitally.
Yeah, I call them digital cash envelopes is what they are.
And it's a super phenomenal system because it's with you on the go all the time. It's there at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, they've got an app.
Yeah. They got a great little app. It's super handy, and unlike the cash envelopes, your money is always with you. Yeah, we'll maybe screen record that and like blow me up or something. Who knows? But it's always with you, because the issue we ran into with cash envelopes is that the money was never there when we needed it. So then we would spend it out of whatever we had on our debit card, and then we would have to go home, get the cash, put it in the bank, move it accounts, whatever, and it was just a huge nightmare. So YNAB has really streamlined it for us. Which is awesome, because if there's too much resistance towards anything, you're never going to do it. Let's see, what other financial advice? I guess not really financial advice, but like I said earlier, just don't be afraid to do without when you're younger. Because looking back on all the stupid shit that I spent my money on when I was just blowing 100% of my paycheck on whatever, I literally wouldn't have noticed that extra $10 going into the bank, but I sure miss it now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's all I got.
That's all I got. That's just some of the things that we wish we had taken advice on, actually done it and listened to when we were younger. So if you're younger, you still got time to fix these mistakes.
Yeah. So I think that's it for us. I see our groceries are here, so we're gonna sign off now. Thanks for watching. If you stuck around, if you like it, like it. If you don't like it 3 times. Subscribe, ring the bell,
or dislike it 3 times.
You can see these beautiful faces.
Like twice.
No, because if they like it twice, they unlike it. If they like it 3 times, they like it.
Because there's a dislike button, so they click dislike, but then they click it again, and it's like they didn't even click it in the first place.
Yeah, if you don't like it, dislike it twice. Twice as much dislike, that'll show us.
That's right, totally.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it for us, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.